Okay,
No.
thank you. I think it's only fair. Unexpected, but fair. Okay, we're on. Okay, welcome to the Open Space and Ecology meeting of Wednesday, October 30th. Sorry for starting a few minutes late. Let the record show that 3 committee members are absent: Mary Gudenkunst, Barbara Ebel, and Kima Haya, who should be here later. Do I have a move to adopt the agenda?
I move.
Glenn?
Mary had a comment on air quality that I forgot to add last time, and I was wondering where we could put that.
We can put it at the beginning if you want.
Okay.
Of the review of chapters.
Yeah, it's pretty quick, and I don't have it written down, but I thought maybe Natalie could write it down.
Okay, that'd be great. Is that all right, Stuart? So, okay.
I only heard one person move the adoption. We're still waiting for a second.
Second.
All those in favor with the addendum?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Oral communications for items not on the agenda. I just want to bring up one thing. I did get an email from Anya Miller, who chairs the Citizens Committee for the review of the draft environmental impact, and I just wanted to share it with you because she sent it as a heads up for the OSEC committee. After meeting with Terry Rivas-Splata, the sitcom, if they're calling it, realized we'll be running out of time, not just to finish our own comments, but to revise them based on his suggestions. So we're going to council on Monday, November 4th to ask for more time. Our members thought December should just be ignored as useless for getting anything done, which was our thoughts originally. And so we'll try to get as much extra time as we can, even up to March 15th, which she personally doubts we can get. Sure hope this would relieve your pressure as well, so please come and support our request. We can go individually and support the request, but because it has not been agendized, we cannot take action as the committee to support the request, although it is in line with our original request and our original assessment of how long this would take. So personally, I encourage the committee members to individually go and support the extension date, but it's up to each individual to do that. I think that it's warranted. I don't think that, although we're plowing through the material at a almost hasty pace, and as much as I would like it to be over, personally, I mean, I'm missing all kinds of fun stuff because we're doing this. I do feel that it does warrant the attention that they're giving it and that we're giving it, and if we had more time, we could give it more attention, even more attention, and I think it deserves that. It is a 6,000-page document that is really rough. So, does anyone have any comments on that, brief comments on that?
Well, if there's an extension, I'm not here for any meetings in January.
And I would not, if we did get an extension, just as my personal opinion, I would not want to continue with weekly meetings.
Can't do it.
It's just too much.
Yeah.
We're not getting the time each week to read the materials. I feel like I'm doing a half-assed job at reading what I am able to get through, and so I would not want weekly meetings like we've been doing, even if we did get the much-needed extension. So,
I guess I feel the same, and also I won't be around for the first couple weeks of January and may not be around later because I have jury duty. So I'm not sure I could, if I end up on a jury, I'm not sure I could get back here, and I would probably want some food.
There's some cookies right there, Glenn. Help yourself.
No, I mean, after.
I know exactly what you mean.
So I don't know, and I probably won't know until the first day of jury service what. Okay. I mean, you never do.
Yeah. But it would give us, time to kind of review the comments individually at the rate that we are hoping to do it. So that's just informational. Yeah.
Just a question on that. the council has approved is getting some help, right, on these comments, so
Yeah.
is that scheduled yet, or?
Stuart, that's the next
That
item
was the
on
next
the
item
agenda?
on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Progress on comments, so let's move on to that. Do you want to give an update on that, Stuart?
Sure. So council approved the request from the Open Space and Ecology Committee. We have sent the first round of comments that was from earlier to him on Monday. I'm not quite sure when we will see him back. I haven't heard back from him. But my guess is if I don't hear back by Monday of next week, I'll send him an email and talk to him. We are working through comments. Natalie and I are working through the comments that were made over the last several meetings, and my hope is to get him another group of comments this upcoming Monday. The plan from the committee was to hopefully start reviewing comments at the November 6th meeting to put them in final form, and then also in the November 13th and the November 20th meetings. So my plan is to, as soon as we can, start sending them to him. I would say we've already sent him, I don't know, maybe 10, 15, whatever the first group of comments were, pages worth.
Okay.
Do you remember which sections those were?
They were the opening sections. They were the ones when Christina were here.
Okay.
J, F,
And 1, 2, and 3, I believe, as well.
1, 2.
First 3 chapters,
And
and
then a couple of the other ones. And I think what will be very nice on the 13th and the 20th is when you see all comments all combined. There are some, I think, as we've talked about, or as you've talked about, that interrelate to different chapters.
Yeah.
And I think as you start seeing them interrelate, there might be other comments that are generated. So that's my hope is to get as much to him, as quickly as we can, and start getting them back as quickly as we can.
Yeah. Did he physically meet with the Citizens Committee?
My understanding was that the Citizens Committee asked him to attend Monday night's meeting to discuss, I'm not sure because I wasn't there, but my understanding was to kind of discuss how his review is going to go. And what he talked to me about, he would make comments about the same things he talked about during his training sessions. Is there evidence? Is it a comment on the EIR? Is it a comment that's specific to the mitigation? Is it all those kinds of things that he talked about? What makes a good comment is how he would review them and provide. The weird word would be comments, but he'd review them and provide not so much changing of the language, but suggestions on where you might want to strengthen something or where you might want to refine it to become more of a pointed question. Because he's got the same position that most people would have, is he doesn't want to create a comment and then say, oh, it was created by this person, and if it doesn't get responded to in a way that would be appropriate. So he's going to try and review it and give information as to how you can fine-tune comments.
Okay, because the money that was allocated by the City Council is actually being shared with the Citizens Committee, which I think is great.
Sure.
Yeah.
The comment I made to council was, we will find the money that we need to
Okay,
in savings to make this work.
yeah.
So if it costs, we asked for $3,000, and my comment to the City Council at the time was, if it costs more than $3,000, we will find savings from other budgets if that's what it takes to make this work, and they were comfortable with that answer.
Okay.
So I'm not overly concerned about that issue at the moment, unless it runs into the 20s, tens of thousands of dollars, then I might have more of an issue, but it's not anticipated to.
Okay. Yes, Glenn.
So is he hired just on an as-needed basis? So if we get an extension?
Yeah, we're paying him by the hour.
Okay, so if we get an extension and decide to spread this out a little bit, we could still
Yes.
get him? Okay.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I bet he would be.
Happy? Ecstatic?
I'm not going to say any of that out loud. I mean, I think he recognizes the amount of work it's going to take. he's he's got other people in his office who also have experience that he's having look at the comments, and then he's reviewing their comments on comments. So I mean, he's going, he recognizes. I told him it'll be 250, 300 pages worth of comments, and he's figuring out how that make that work within his office, within the time period that we have, and he knows that the due date is November 22nd.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Do we have any more questions on the progress on the comments? And also, I know that, Glenn, you in particular were interested in commenting on the comments. Are we putting that aside now? Because I think that might be what we should do. But I don't want to disappoint you if you're really dying to comment.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we now have a professional doing that, so maybe the committee members don't need to. But I suggested that before we knew we would have expert help. So and plus, I haven't gotten to it yet. I keep thinking I will, and I don't. So.
Okay. I think it's better. I think that's better because even if we submit comments that are law comments, at least we submitted them, and
right.
we'll have them responded to.
Oh, better that we have a professional review.
Yeah.
Than a an internal review. So I'm fine with that.
Okay. So let's go on then to comments on air quality that were held over from previous meeting. Glenn?
Okay, so I just wanted to say this while Natalie was here taking notes, because it's not written down yet. But Mary mentioned she was going to lead the discussion on the air quality section, and I ended up doing it kind of very extemporaneously. And one thing that Mary brought up was that a lot of the pollution from the Bay Area ends up in the Central Valley, and perhaps that should be investigated. It wasn't mentioned in the DEIR. But impacts from, especially I think from the operational part of the development, but maybe also from the construction part, really probably not going to bother us that much around here because of the wind, which the DEIR talks about, but they are going to blow someplace, probably east. Well, they're going to blow east. So I don't, have no idea if there's methodology for assessing what the extra impact of Bayland's development would be. But it should be mentioned and perhaps should be asked about.
I think definitely, because you saw how smoky it got here from those fires in Napa and Livermore and other places further afield, and that's what they must feel like every time we have a high polluting day.
So it's a good point. So
okay. Was there anything else she had on air quality that we missed?
No.
Okay.
Well, she may, but that's the only thing she mentioned to me.
Okay. So I'm hoping she will also have on biological resources, because she knows a lot of this stuff really, really well. Okay, so let's start on biological resources. And the only written comment that I really stopped and wrote out, I passed out to you because I really want to make an important impact about this. And this is an ongoing problem that I've seen time and time again in the work done by several of the environmental surveyors or companies that we've worked with in the past, including ESA, LSA, TRA, and any other acronyms you can think of. And that's around reconnaissance level field surveys. And in the very beginning, in the introduction, the section talks about information used in the preparation of this section was obtained from reconnaissance level field surveys and existing documents. Well, a lot of the existing documents use the same type of reconnaissance level field surveys that they're talking about here. So if you go down to paragraph 3, it says on March 2nd, 2007, June 20th, 2007, April 20th, 2011, and April 19th, 2013. That is 4 days, 2 in 1 year, 2 in another year, reconnaissance field level surveys covering the entire project site were conducted by ESA biologists. Doesn't say how many biologists covered the entire site. I wonder, and the survey, the 2011 survey confirmed that site conditions in terms of biological resources remain consistent with no appreciable changes in distribution or condition of existing habitats between 2007 conditions and 2011 conditions, and are also consistent with earlier site surveys. And this says the surveys described above were timed during various calendar years to maximize the potential for observations of special species status plants to be in flower and to maximize opportunities to observe wildlife species that may be present and using the project site for breeding and rearing purposes, etc., ad nauseum. I cannot tell you how much this offends me and how much I object to this methodology. You go out for 4 days, spread over 2 days in one year and 2 days in another year, and you survey how many acres is the Bayland site, and you consider this to be a thorough study of the biological assets of the area, that is, I want to use a swear word here and I'm not going to, that is absurd. It is not scientific. It is not even properly observational. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about in where I wrote this little thing. Typical of ESA, they look at averages and assume things are the same. For annual rainfall, years ending in June 2007 and June 2011, the average rainfall was similar. 17.5 inches and 15.64 inches respectively. But I do not know how they can consider conditions on the ground to be similar when the combined rainfall for March and April of 2007 was 0.47 inches, that's less than half an inch, and combined rainfall for March-April 2011 is 8.34 inches. That is a considerable difference when considering seasonal wetlands, for example. This highlights a common problem and the fallacy in using these types of hit-and-run field surveys that do not stand the test of time in gathering long-term data and biological trends. And I attached the rainfall chart from the Golden Gate Weather Services, that the ESA biologists saw no appreciable changes, quote-unquote, between a year with over 8 inches of rainfall in the 2-month period and a year that was a virtual drought with less than half an inch of rain for the same 2-month period questions the veracity of the observations, and this should be corroborated over time by and with consistent scientific monitoring by a different and nonpartisan research group. I am sick to death of their sloppy, slap, hit-and-run methods, and then they assume that's how it is forever. And that's exactly what happened with the Northeast Ridge studies that they did. They did not understand the needs of the Clippy or the Mission Blue or the Elfin, and they went out and looked for a San Francisco garter snake on like one day, and then went out and destroyed the habitat. And here they are doing it again. And that is not the way that you do scientific studies. That's not the way you survey an area. And I think that this is completely inadequate. And it just made me sick to my stomach when I read this and thought, here we go, all over again. 4 days. 4 days they went out and assessed it. And if you go in and read all of these other reports that they're relying on, you'll find the exact same type of methodology used. And it's wrong. And this should be thrown out and redone. And I can't say that strong enough. I'm just sick to death. I mean, I got my degree in biology. I know what doing a field survey is versus, an actual study of what's there. And they go out and they take like a 1 square meter and do a bioassessment of 1 square meter and then apply it to the whole damn area. And that's not what happens in real nature at all. And so it makes me sick when they talk about it like this, like there's no seasonal wetlands, and how would they even know if there's any other plants or animals there when how many biologists surveyed? Was it a team of 20, 30, 40? Or was it one person who walked the site, or 2 people who walked the site? So it's just wrong. And I really question the veracity of all of the rest of the data they have there based on this. And I cite this as an example, just the rainfall as an example, because in really wet years, you have a lot of vernal pools, you have a lot of animals that live in those vernal pools. In a dry year, you don't see those. It's just like after the fire on San Bruno Mountain, we saw fire poppies that hadn't been seen in decades because it took a fire. But they were there. They were there. They wouldn't have shown up in one of these field surveys, that's for darn sure. Anyway.
So I have a comment on the same exact paragraph. Based on 5 years of observations of the baylands, the area is undergoing constant topographical change in the 5-year period of time. So where they say that the condition of existing habitats has not changed, I beg to differ.
You can see the changes in the photographic evidence. You can see the changes on the ground. And you can see where, as bad land managers, they have encouraged what they're referring to as ruderal habitat or junk habitat from all of the pampas grass and other things they've allowed to run rampant there. But beneath all of that, there is still really habitat, that's worthy of examination. Any other comments on page 1? So the beginning of page 2, 4C2, they talk about, for example, these plant species that require serpentine, dune, etc., etc. In my experience, while certain habitats favor certain plants, it is not a correlation that those plants only grow in those habitats. So when they talk about plants that require serpentine or might require serpentine, a lot of plants that require, there are serpentine and non-serpentine plants, and it's not well documented, but you can have plants that are right next to each other, and one on serpentine soil and one that's not, and they look identical, and one is only grows on serpentine and won't grow on regular dirt. So this is just a very general characterization, and it doesn't mean that even though those plants like certain habitats, it doesn't mean they don't grow where those habitats are not exactly like that. And so there again, they're typecasting things based on what their normal range of habitat is rather than what they've actually observed in the field. And I object to that as well. And then in the regional settings, they don't talk anything about some of the other animals and plants and everything else. They mention no mention of the native bay oysters that are in the area. And even though there are not, I don't know if there's oysters in the lagoon, I don't know if there's native oysters on the exact project site, but I do know that there are native oysters in the area where the runoff is from the project site, because the native Bay Area oysters are coming back kind of along the area. And it was once an extremely abundant area of native bay oysters, and that was one of the primary foods for the Ohlone.
There is a big oyster survey going on, and I'm trying to remember who is doing it. But they're surveying a number of areas around the bay, so we might put in a comment that they should locate that survey and see what's going on.
Yeah, they should probably survey that little cove right where you get on the freeway, as well as as well as the lagoon and along the riprap. And then they don't really cover the lagoon very well, and they talk about the site along the bay being dominated by non-native ruderal and grassland species, etc., landscaped areas, and all of this. And they make a big deal about non-native grasses, and I'd just like to comment here that across most of California, most of the grasslands in California are what you would really call non-native grasses now. There's very few native grasses left. And most of that grass replacement was where the habitat was replaced is over 100, 150 years old when they brought cattle and sheep to California. So what we call a natural grassland habitat in California is non-native grass. So they should not be hanging their hat on the fact that it's non-native grass. Most of the grassland is non-native grass. And so I think that is a real mischaracterization in the way they're describing it. And then vegetative communities, on page 4C3, they talk about the tidal and freshwater wetlands occur along the edges of drainage channels and in the portion of the project site that was formerly a rail yard, etc. Well, there are a lot of areas in there that are seasonal wetlands, and some of them quite productive seasonal wetlands, and I brought a photograph of an example of seasonal wetlands that I've passed out to you. This is on the east side of the Brisbane Railroad Tunnel. And this is just one of a series of photographs where this whole area all around where the Mission Blue Nursery is now, and that whole area that's sort of between Old Bay Shore and machinery equipment is a seasonal wetland, and it's a very viable seasonal wetland. As you can see in the other picture, the water can be quite deep in certain places with quite a lot of life. And when I took these pictures, I'm having a hard time seeing it in the actual pictures. It's kind of nice the way my husband blew this up. But there were these little fish in the water that were about 3 inches long. I don't know what they were, but they were quite a lot of them. As soon as I walked near them, they all hid. But I don't know what they were, and I don't see them mentioned anywhere in here as one of the animals.
They do talk about at one point they mentioned a tadpole of the western toad, I think it was.
It wasn't a tadpole. There were tadpoles, definitely, but it wasn't a tadpole. It was a small silvery fish-looking fish, about this long. And I remember because we were joking about anybody want a fish sandwich, because I was surprised that there were actually fish there. And then my sister said she thought they were stickleback, but I don't know that we ever found out. And so I also object to them characterizing the understory as rudderall habitat. The definition of rudderall is not appropriate for here. It talks about it being a junk habitat, but there's still a lot of native habitat there, not just on Ice House Hill. Does anyone else have anything on these 2 pages?
On that same page, first paragraph, the box culverts are 12 feet high by 12 feet wide. They're not 12 feet long. They're 300 feet long. I mean, that's just a minor.
Oh. And
my comment was on the next page, I think, 4C4.
okay. Oh, yeah.
So, page 4C4 says there's lupin on Ice House Hill, but then page 4C14 says that there isn't. And I can't really tell whether the claim that there isn't lupin means that there's not the particular species of lupin that are hosts to endangered butterflies, but that might be kind of important because lupin is a host plant for, Calliope?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's inconsistent. 4C4 says there is, 4C14 says there isn't, but maybe it's not wrong. Maybe the claim that there isn't means that there isn't the right kind. But anyway, we're not clear because there are a bunch of kinds of lupin.
Well, the other part of that, and I noted that same thing on C14, is that the lupin that is the host plant can completely subside, actually does completely subside to where you can't see it at all during the dry periods. It goes completely underground, and then the same plant reemerges the following spring. So depending on what time of year or what day they happen to do their bioassessment, if it was a dry year, even by July, you may not be able to see the lupins.
I was just up in Buckeye last week, and it's really dry, and you can still see the lupins up there.
Yeah, but there's a lot of them that have subsided along there. Like, the area right before you go down into the canyon, that like triangular area, there are many long-established lupins there that completely subside, and you can't see them right now. And then they'll start to emerge. They probably are starting to emerge from that first rain that we had a couple weeks
The
ago.
ones I saw were very dry, and they weren't reemerging. But,
Oh, okay.
But you could see them. I mean,
Yeah.
they weren't real obvious, but you could see them.
Yeah. And then,
Well, there's a suggestion on 4C4 that there are deer on the mountain.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, too.
So they obviously are using boilerplate once again rather than science.
because there are no deer on San Bruno Mountain or on the Baylands or anywhere else unless somebody brought Bambi with them when they were doing their biosurvey. On the map on figure 4C-1 on page 4C-5, I think that this is very badly mischaracterized. This bioassessment is really not accurate. For example, the little tab that goes into the Brisbane Lagoon, they have this characterized as invasive scrub. And while there are invasives on that little tab, there are also toyon, coyote bush, and a lot of other natives on that little tab that goes out into the lagoon. And that little tab that goes out into the lagoon, although while part of it has slide material and fill on it, the actual toe of this is native rock that touches the bay. So you guys see where I'm talking about, that little green tab sticking out in the lagoon. And then over here in the former rail yard, they have all this area they call it mud flat, I guess, or rudderal. I guess this must be rudderal. It's hard to tell from their coloration, but that's not quite right because there are seasonal wetlands. The seasonal wetlands that they do have marked here is not large enough. There's seasonal wetlands that happen where the roundhouse is. There are seasonal wetlands that extend all the way along this whole area. The area at the base of Icehouse Hill that they're calling rudderal, there is significant areas of Douglas iris there that emerge during the winter. And then Icehouse Hill, it says non-native annual grassland. But there's also, kind of native grass in that area, and there's a lot of other forbs and other plants in that area. And then over here in the area below Icehouse Hill, that's just not colored at all, but is part of the project area, where the Mission Blue Nursery is, and also where machinery equipment is, and I guess the tank farm's near there too. There is a lot of seasonal wetlands in that area that's not marked properly. And so I really don't know what else is wrong on here, because there's a lot that I see that is wrong.
So they don't identify vernal ponds.
No, they call them freshwater emergent wetlands.
Along Lagoon Way, there's two.
Yeah, and they're not
identified.
No. And they're not identified in a lot of places along here. Even right here at the intersection where Lagoon Way meets the freeway off-ramp, in wet years that becomes a vernal pool as well. And then on page C7 at the top, they talk about all these different species up here that may or may not be here. But my question is, it's under wildlife and non-native annual grassland and rural habitat. It's 4C4, and then it goes on 4C7. And my question is, was anything observed, or is this boilerplate again? Because they're mentioning a lot of things here, but is this just boilerplate, or is this just what they assume may or may not be there? There's been no actual observation or no mention of it being actually observed. And then down here at the bottom part, on the last paragraph, even high traffic levels and human activity, et cetera, et cetera. It says during ESEA's reconnaissance site visit, the operator of the horse stable said yada yada, and that's hearsay, and they should actually do actual studies and not hearsay, not use hearsay in the environmental impact report. Anybody else have anything there?
Just that they did not mention whether or not they're foxes. I mean, they're very loose with their description of the wildlife that is on site. They say such as skunks and raccoons. Well, there are only 2 species, and there's red foxes, gray foxes, there's possum, and others that. There may be others, but they're obviously not being detailed.
Yeah, they also say that they talk about coyote on Ice House Hill, but it have been, but I can tell you that coyote have been observed on Tunnel Road by me personally and by probably everybody sitting here.
Yeah, I've seen them around.
So
I saw a dead fox out by, let's see, where was it? Lagoon. This was a couple years ago, but it was, let's see the map. I saw it right here.
Let the record show that she's notating right near Fisherman's Point. Is that where?
Yeah, it was a little bit north of that, and it was on, what's that road called? The road that goes to Sierra Point.
It is actually called Sierra Point Parkway.
Okay, so it's on Sierra Point Parkway, and I believe it was a gray fox. It was pretty squashed when I saw it, but I think that's what it was.
Okay. On 4.8, C8, the paragraph 2, they talk about on San Bruno Mountain and in the region, gorse, Portuguese broom, cotoneaster are commonly found as dominants in the invasive shrubland area and are also found interspersed within the project site. I do not consider them to be dominants, and I think that's a mischaracterization, and especially when they just say on San Bruno Mountain and in the region. That is not so specific at all. And then where left uncontrolled, native species disappear, as observed on the project site where non-native shrubs have become dominant species. I don't believe that's true either, because I can certainly see a lot of natives out there, and I don't see where these other ones have become dominant. Few natives remain in the invasive scrub community and consist of tree-like specimens. That is also a mischaracterization. I can take you out there right now and show you. And then coastal scrub habitat, etc. It just talks, this whole thing is really pretty much a mischaracterization, and then they don't actually talk about any actual sightings. And then on C4C9, they talk about they talk just a little bit about the depression within which the turntable would have rotated accumulates water runoff and has developed wetland vegetation. It also has wetland, like animals and life and everything else, frogs and all kinds of stuff, not just vegetation. And freshwater emergent wetlands also occur adjacent to the Caltrain tracks in the vicinity of Ice House Hill, etc. It's actually pretty a lot. And the other thing is they talk about, someplace in here they talk about that some of these species need a constant source of fresh water that disappears on the wetlands, but it does not disappear. It might disappear in certain parts of the baylands, but the creek along Cypress is wet all year around, and it is indicative of the fact that there's water there all year round, and that is in the vicinity. It is right through the little tunnel, and so I really question this where they're saying there's not water all year round available. And then they talk about were also observed foraging in the shallow standing waters of freshwater emergent wetland habitats during a reconnaissance survey of the project site conducted on April 20th, 2011. One day. I won't give the adjective in between. And then the freshwater drainage.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Freshwater drainage at the bottom, that a lot of that is tidal as well. And in that tidal area, I've seen in those drainage channels, I've observed egrets several times on my way to work using those quote-unquote drainage channels.
Maybe geese still up there too.
Yeah. Yeah, but I've seen the white, you know, and lots of...
Herons use it also.
Yeah, the herons also. And then at the bottom of 4C10, it says, however, it is unlikely that any of these species would currently be found in the tidal marsh, etc., due to the relatively small size and long-standing fragmentation and isolation of remaining habitat. Unlikely isn't good enough. They haven't done a proper bioassessment. They are making a lot of assumptions without actually doing the work. And this is throughout this entire document. And that's just wrong.
I've actually seen egrets, or not egrets, herons at the lagoon.
Yeah. And then on 4C11, the bottom it says the Brisbane Lagoon is a tidal lagoon feature, you know, yada yada. The lagoon's shoreline contains little beach during high tides, and most of the shoreline exposed during low tide is protected by riprap. That's not really true at all. Most,
Yeah, it is.
well, most, but not all. There's lots of little beaches all along there, and I think that they are discounting the fact that there is a lot of beaches, and that a lot of birds actually use the riprap, and there's now like little beaches where the riprap used to be. Okay, and then it talks on 4C12 about, however, the 2011 reconnaissance level surveys confirm that the information contained in the 2003 delineation remains a valid source of information regarding the location and distribution of wetland features on this site, et cetera, et cetera. Come on, they went out there for 2 days, and now they're trying to validate this whole report from 2003, which was probably also done on 2 days. I'm sorry. That is ridiculous. And I don't even know how to form that into a question. On what basis did they draw these conclusions in 1 day on a reconnaissance level thing? Anybody else on that section? Go on to 14C3. You can tell I was running out of energy. In page 2, it talks about the appendix, the region, and previous CIR documents. Those documents record observations of previous biologists of species occurrences directly on site or adjacent to the site. And then it talks about species being believed to be extirpated. But I really call into question this. They're referring to other documents that I think are really... They need to do a new study. They can't just refer to old documents and then believe something's extirpated. And then in the species assessed in detail, I'd like to see the detail. I don't believe that they have. And why isn't San Bruno elfin on here?
I assume because they seem to be saying this species have potential to appear on the site or not, and it's not clear whether the elfin does or not. Maybe that's why it's not on the list.
Maybe, but have they found no incidence of its host plant whatsoever?
Well, its host plant is what? Stone crop, right?
Right. Which could grow along the rock walls of Ice House Hill that's been sheared off.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. And then back to C14, where they talk about the surveys, but there's a lot of plants that you can't see that subside during dry periods. And so it really depends on when they did the surveys, how extensive the surveys were. Did they survey them over a period of time, like, every 2 weeks over a 6-month period? Because as you know, growing up here and observing different plants, they emerge at different times each year depending on the weather and depending on the rainfall. And, like the San Francisco wallflower can emerge as early as December or as late as, March, April, depending on rainfall. And then on the special status fish part, I don't see where they mentioned stickleback, and yet several people have thought that it's a possibility that those small fish that I saw were stickleback. And even though they're not normally in not normally found here in this range, it's primarily a more southerly species. There was definitely something there, and so what was it? And there's no mention of what it could have been. And also, as we know, a lot of species have shifted their range further north due to, global warming. And you see that a lot in the ocean migrations as well. And then they just go on and on and on. And on my next, does anyone have any comments in this section? Because my next comment's on page 19. And that's about the San Francisco garter snake. And it says, the garter snake's preferred habitat is densely vegetated freshwater ponds near an open hillside where they can sun themselves and find their preferred prey, California red-legged frogs. Well, that might be their preferred prey, but they do eat other things. And also, there is freshwater ponds and freshwater available near open hillsides in this area. And just because they haven't sat around long enough to actually find a San Francisco garter snake doesn't mean that they're absolutely not there.
My colleague at San Francisco State is a red-legged frog expert, and I've talked to him about red-legged frogs in this area several times. And he told me that red-leggeds require a standing water that's 2 to 3 feet deep all year, not just
Right.
a puddle. It's got to be quite deep. And he was pretty doubtful that there are any around. So
I don't think that there are any red-legged frogs anymore in this area, but does the San Francisco garter snake eat anything else?
it says somewhere in this section that they will eat
Right.
Pacific
Chorus frogs,
Forest frog.
Pacific chorus frogs.
which we have a lot of in the area.
Right, but they would probably have to eat quite a few of them because they're pretty small. So I don't know.
I don't know.
It seems to me that maybe what we should say is that the surveying seems to be really inadequate, and that they need to pay special attention to the salt marsh, to the red-legged frog, to the San Francisco garter snake,
These mysterious little fish.
the stickleback maybe. Because I would imagine that they take different survey techniques for all those, so maybe we should ask for certain specific species to be really looked at. And those are endangered species. The garter snake is, and I think the salt marsh is too.
Yeah. And I really
Or
feel,
mouse.
yeah.
Salt marsh, mouse.
I feel that there should be more thorough observation over a longer period of time rather than just 4 days, and have a real bioassessment of the area done. The potential is high for several plants and animals in the area.
There's no mention of the San Francisco damselfly,
Oh yeah, that's
which
in
is
the
an
area
endangered
too.
species and inhabits the lagoon area and more than likely Visitation Creek.
Hmm.
Has it been seen out there? Have you seen them?
I don't know if it has, but they don't mention it at all.
It has been seen along the Cypress Creek area. right through the railroad tunnel. And then I sort of started running out of steam, and till I got to the mitigation area. And under the San Bruno Mountain Habitat Conservation Plan, kind of talks about all these different things. When we got to the mitigation area, like on page 4C36, under the conclusion, special status plant species occur within the project site only on Icehouse Hill. Well, they didn't do a full bioassessment, so how can they say that these things only occur on Icehouse Hill, the area that they are willing to save, compared to everywhere else? And then they talk about activities on Icehouse Hill, and they're very focused on Icehouse Hill when not on the whole project site. And then in like 37, on page 37, if the city determines that disturbance or mortality is unavoidable, special status plants shall be restored on site in either the annual grassland or coastal scrub habitat located on Icehouse Hill. Well, I'm sorry, but one of those most important special status plants is the Viola pedunculata. And it's the same problem that we had with the Northeast Ridge. They have not been able to successfully grow and transplant and reestablish this plant. So this is bull. They can't do it. Mm-hmm. So why are they putting it here as a mitigation measure? They already have successfully demonstrated that they can't do it numerous times with lots and lots of money thrown at it, and they still have not been able to do it.
I'm sorry, I don't know that plant. Can you spell the last part? I can do the viola because that sounds like the instrument.
P-E-N-D-U-N.
Wait, hold on. P-E-N. P-E-D?
I believe pedunculata.
Pedunculata. Yeah, I think you're right.
P-E-D.
U-N-C.
U-L-A-T-A.
Mm-hmm.
U-L-A-T-A. Because I'm sure it's someplace else. Okay. I'm sorry. You know me, I'm not a plant guy.
Yeah. It shows up in a lot of documents in Brisbane. And then they...
Not in the budget.
Right. Yeah. It will if they try to do this mitigation measure. You'll be paying a fortune for these. And they talk about fencing off the area, and yet the mitigation area shall be fenced or marked for 3 years. And yet what will the fencing do to other migrations? Fencing in and of itself will create a barrier for flight for calliope, so that's a very inadequate mitigation measure for trying to preserve habitat for calliopes. It's like stupid. Yeah, Glenn.
Just one comment on Icehouse Hill and the trails and the fencing and all that. I mean, whether or not native plants, especially rare and endangered plants, occur elsewhere than on Icehouse Hill, it seems that they do occur on Icehouse Hill. And I was reading through all this trail and fencing and this and that and thinking, it really doesn't sound like such a good idea to put a trail on Icehouse Hill at all. It's going to be disruptive, and people are going to make new trails. And then if they put fences, that's going to be disruptive. So I'm not sure what sort of comment would be right, but maybe it seems to me that it would be difficult to mitigate the impact of any trail constructed on Icehouse Hill. And if there is viable butterfly habitat up there, I think it should be left alone.
The other part too is Icehouse Hill is dangerous. I'm sorry, there's a cliff that you can just walk right off of and fall to your death. And there's no fencing around it. And of course they would have to put fencing if they made this an attractive area for children to go to.
I just think you're going to have pets up there, and you're going to have, when you have pets up there, even if they're on a leash, they're going to have seeds in their coats, and there will be invasive species seeds on those coats, and you're going to have people walking off trail. I just think it sounds like a bad idea. As much trouble as those butterflies are in, I don't think the impact of the trails could really be mitigated. Not from what I read. I wasn't satisfied with it.
Yeah. And then they talk about number 3 on page 37, no loss in the total number of individual plants, et cetera, should be verified at the end of the 5-year monitoring period. But what happens after that, and what about the size of the plants? And they talk about a qualified botanist shall identify an appropriate plant palette and restoration methodology. I mean, it just really, they're basing this on a lot of stuff that hasn't been proven, that they have no track record for being able to do. And then on page 40, they go on about impacts on raptors and avian species. And they talk about raptors would continue to use open space areas within the project site for foraging, and yet they talk about promenades which would be paved. So I don't see how raptors are going to be foraging through those areas. And then it talks about, in paragraph 1, 2, 3, in the vicinity of the project site, San Bruno Mountain State and County Park provide more than 2,000 acres of significantly higher quality foraging habitats that are protected in perpetuity. Therefore, large areas of existing foraging habitat would remain in the vicinity even after the project site development concludes. Removal of existing unpaved areas under any of the project site development would not represent a substantial reduction in the available foraging habitat and thus would not have a substantial effect on the local population of raptors. That is blatantly false. The raptors need a lot of area for foraging. There is not that much area on San Bruno Mountain for them. It is not close enough in the vicinity, and it is the area that is closest is not protected. And there are not enough trees, large trees, on San Bruno Mountain in this area to raptors they have territories. And it's ridiculous to say that. That's just not true. And over on the next part on C41, it talks about damage or disturbance to occupied burrowing nest owls, and they talk about removal of only doing removal of trees during the non-nesting time. But then where do all the birds and raptors and burrowing owls go? Because they're destroying the habitat, and they don't talk about where they go. They make it seem like, well, we're just not going to do it when they're nesting, and then they'll be fine. They'll fly away somewhere else. But where else are they going to go? They don't talk about that at all because there really is no other habitat in the area that's suitable that's not being developed. And then they talk nothing about the effects of pile driving on the burrowing owls, on the eggs, on the raptors, on things falling out of the nest from the concussion of the pile drivers before they remove all the trees. And I just find that all these mitigation measures go on, and none of them do anything for long-term protection. And they say, stuff like, well, we'll just move them out of the way, and we'll build all this stuff, and then they'll come back. And that's really not true. But they make a big deal about, raptor and bat mortality from collisions with wind turbines. And on page 45, they talk about, in paragraph 2, would be affected by pollutants from urban runoff into the lagoon during operation. Well, once you pollute the place and fill it with silt, what makes you think you can regain that habitat? That's lots of hubris there. I just don't think it's good enough. And then on page 46, there's some definite contradictions, because down here in these, I can't even think what they're called, dots,
Bullet points.
bullet points. It says, any increase in impervious surface area shall include establishment of vegetative swells, permeable pavement materials, etc. But the whole idea is they're going to pave over this with non-permeable pavement materials so that nothing soaks into the landfill. So I'm kind of like, that's really contradictory to me with other things in the report. And I just don't think their mitigations are good enough. So, anything else, you guys? Sean, I know you've got more stuff, and so do you, Glenn.
I had one more comment. Did you have anything, Sean?
No, I've given because I didn't get through the site, the entire chapter.
So I just had one additional comment. On page 4C60, they talk about bats. And throughout this chapter, they mention several things that will affect bats. One of them is possibly the wind generation facilities, but part of it is just loss of roosting sites. And that includes trees, it includes old buildings where, and apparently these haven't been observed out there, so it's not clear that they're actually there, and that's another thing we need to find out. But if they are there, their roosting sites are going to be very disrupted. And so I wanted to, well, wait a minute. They say they're going to have a bat survey. So that's on the bottom of the page. So they're going to get a bat biologist out there. So they are going to determine whether there are going to be bats. They talk about if there are bats out there, creating a buffer around the construction so as to minimize disturbance, and removal of trees, not during the breeding season, but I would like to ask them to consider a mitigation measure that consists of replacement bat habitat, since they apparently are going to take away a lot of things that are now used as habitat. So would it be possible to construct some alternatives, because bats are very important and they're in trouble all over the country.
Big trouble.
And I guess there are like nesting boxes and stuff that can be built for them.
And then in the table 4C-1 of all the different special species statuses, Dana Dilworth sent me her biological resources table, and I know that she's putting this in through the committee, but I'd also like us to put it in with ours as well, because I read through all of the things that she said here, and I agree with them about, like, it says low potential for San Bruno elfin. This is 4C63. And she says this is not correct. There are rock outcroppings of rock cuts in the eastern and southern end of Ice House Hill. It should be noted that with the Mission Blue Nursery adjacent to Ice House Hill, a stewardship program is already in place. Occurrence of the Mission Blue butterfly host plants have been confirmed, documented and submitted, etc. That was one of the other things that's important for the Clippy. Is they do what's called puddling, where they need a water source to kind of land in, and I'm concerned that and it's all part of their what they do, and I'm concerned that if there are any Clippy in the Ice House Hill area, that any development might eliminate their very essential puddling that they need.
Can we get a copy of Dana's?
Yeah, I brought it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
And I can send it to you electronically as well.
Even better.
Okay. Did you want to see it?
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
want to see it.
I just feel like that they have not, like, if you read through this, it says, moderate, low potential for being there. And then you have like one that's observed. They actually observed something. And so you know that they didn't observe any of the other stuff because they didn't go looking for it.
Yeah, so according to Dana's report, the stickleback has been actually sighted out there. I guess, by Jim McKissick.
Who is an expert in this area. So I found this whole section just made me ill with how bad their scientific methodology was and how inadequate their observations, their studies, their bioassessment really is. So anything else on this section?
They mentioned habitat conservation plan helping out, and no.
No.
I just, yeah.
Yeah. The Habitat Conservation Plan, the HCP for the mountain already is underfunded and less than effective. So, and I do have other photographs of the area to submit to you as well. I'll send them electronically. They date from 2007, I believe. So, should we go on to alternatives? I will tell you that I have not read this chapter other than cursorily when we first started.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the growth and sustainability.
I've read pieces of it, but if I haven't read the whole thing thoroughly, I therefore wonder if we should try to do it since we haven't read it. I mean, is there anybody here who's read the whole thing?
I read these two in the beginning as well.
Okay, so I think we should probably table this then and put this for the next meeting as well.
All right, so how much does that leave us to do at the next meeting?
Oh, God.
A lot.
Too much.
I think you have these two plus growth inducements.
And then starting our comments, yeah.
It's 5, 6, and 7, right? What's in chapter 6? Is that
That's growth inducements.
okay?
I got to a certain point, and then that was as far as I could get before really not.
Do you think we have any hope of getting through 3 whole chapters next week?
There's always hope. That was what was at the bottom of Pandora's box. I was just making my child read myths. I'm sorry.
We got through 3 last week.
Yeah, but
not very well.
2 of those we pretty much blew off. We decided because there wasn't much in there of interest to the committee, but these chapters aren't going to be like that.
Just going over the alternatives, it sounded like when Cliff and Ray were talking about the council massaging this whole thing, that analyzing these presented alternatives isn't necessarily important because it's going to be coming up different anyway in the end. Do we really need to spend a lot of time analyzing the proposed alternatives when it's going to be some mix of something but not necessarily what's written down? Just thinking of time.
Well, what the schedule says is tonight we were supposed to do biological resources, alternatives, and sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, and then November 6th, we were supposed to talk about growth inducements, and then review of comments were on November 6th, November 13th, and November 20th. So I think that we should still put growth inducements at the beginning of November 6th. And let's try to scan alternatives and sustainability, and if we have any comments, to make them at that night as well.
Right,
But
because if
really
you make comments
focus
after
on-
that night, it would be hard to try and get them written up to Terry and back by the 20th.
Yeah.
I mean, if you wait till the 13th to make comments,
Yeah.
There won't be any chance to do that.
right.
Okay. We can also always hope that we do get an extension, but we
2
can't
3 more
bank on it.
meetings. I'm telling you, as you have more meetings, my value goes down.
Mine
Stuart,
does
that's
too. Yeah.
I hate to tell you that, Stuart, but that's similar to looking at air pollution on a per capita basis. It's math and magic, and it just doesn't work.
So you're saying my value is constant? Thank you.
Well, we're saying your value goes with the wind.
With the air pollution.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
kidding.
No, Stuart, it's a fixed point in an ever-changing universe.
Yeah,
I used to say.
a high fixed point.
Right.
So,
A fixed point.
um,
So you want to do Chapter 6 first?
the growth inducements? Yeah, I do. I think it's very important that we discuss growth inducements because I think that one of the things that it's very important.
I do too. I made a comment on it already.
Yeah, that we need to take a stand on growth inducements because the more we continue to offer up growth inducements, the more pressure and the more growth where we really should be looking at non-growth inducements to bring it down to a level that's sustainable in the planet.
I think the benefit you will have on sustainability is that there is another committee working on a very different perspective of sustainability.
Yeah.
So I think from the perspective of trying to get through this document, if you don't get to sustainability with comments, it may not be the worst thing.
Yeah.
As opposed to other areas such as growth inducements or alternatives. I think those are higher priority.
Yeah.
Which chapter covers cumulative impacts? Is that in the growth inducements?
That's growth inducements.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that we should primarily focus on growth inducements at the next meeting, and that should be and then any wrap-up comments that anybody missed on any of the other sections.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's a ton that I have not done yet, but I also know I'm not going to get them done by next week. So.
Okay.
That's where we're at.
Okay.
So let's go on. I mean, we're only human, and this is an inhuman report.
Excuse me, one question. Is the council going to decide next week whether they're going to do the extension? Do you know when they'll decide?
I've learned never to make a bet on when councils decide. I mean, my understanding is that it will be on their agenda.
Very, very prudently put.
My hope would be to make a decision prior to November 22nd.
That would be good, wouldn't it? Okay.
I can't help but observe that if they had listened to us when we first approached them with a very reasonable date of the end of January, we wouldn't be in this situation. And we could have done a much more thorough job of what we've already done.
And I think that should be all the comments we make on that topic.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's move on to, if everyone agrees, approval of the minutes.
Were you missing a minute?
I have them now.
Yeah.
Why did you have
I
two?
just discovered another set.
Ooh, there was enough.
Sean had took your copy.
Oh, yeah.
Knew it.
Looks okay to me. I move that the minutes be approved.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And do we have, other than for the agenda next time, if you have any agenda items, please send them right away. And the other part is, the agenda, we're going to do growth inducements first, then we'll talk about alternatives and sustainability if we have time, and also if at that time for the next meeting, could we have a copy of all the comments so far?
Sure. Everything that we have typed up, yes.
Okay. I know you guys are doing a monumental task of typing these up.
Yes. Then also just to let you know, on the 13th, it's normally your regular meeting. And I know there was a couple of items we were thinking of bringing back to you, Peter. Styler was going to come in and talk about the restoration work that he's working on. And then I think Maria would want to come in and talk a little bit more about the zip car that I think we're getting close to getting an acceptable agreement.
Okay.
The question is, given the fact that we're so deep into this document and dealing with comments that day, do you want me to postpone those two issues until the regular meeting in December?
Yes,
Okay.
unless we get an extension.
Okay.
Does everyone agree with that?
Yeah.
Fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the 2 items that I've got. I mean, and then, of course, there's always, if we want to, there's always other fun things like our, the potential energy plan, conservation plan that we haven't talked about for a while that I think Mayor Miller talked about when he was here a year ago. I mean, I recognize that what you guys have been doing all this period of time, and I think he does as well, but I think at some point we need to get back to figuring that one out.
Well, and divestment, which is pretty tabled.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's a number of things that we just haven't had opportunities in the last 5 months or 4 months to be working on.
Yeah, we have a lot of work to do. But this work is some of the most long-range impact work that we could do because it sets the framework for what we're going to be living with for the next 50 to 100 years. And as tedious and onerous as it is, we can't lose sight of that.
So, depending on what happens, I'll work with the chair to figure out the agendas for the upcoming meetings.
Okay. Thank you.
Enjoy your Halloween.
This meeting is adjourned, and don't forget everyone to vote. The vote will be done by the next time we meet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.